It was such a strange juxtaposition of being in these spaces with folks who had never been to Israel, had no connection, and then it being like a very lived experience for me.
We have a long fight ahead of us.
Here I am.
Here I am.
Here I am.
Here I am.
Here I am with Shai Davidai.
My guest for today is Nate Shalev, co-founder of Shalom Dykes, which creates safe, inclusive, and happy spaces for Jewish LGBTQ dykes. So here I am with Nate Shalev.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Nate, we have so many things to jump into and delve in, but before that, I want to start with the question I ask every guest, which is, Nate Shalev, what kind of a Jew are you?
I am a Jew trying to create joyful Jewish spaces and trying to think about the way that Judaism and community fit together and works with one another and how it shows up in our worlds.
All right, and we're going to get into that community and the what and the why that you're creating it. Before I do, there are a few third rails that I want to touch and step on because I think it's so important that we have the complicated conversations rather than evade them. So one, you use the pronouns they, them. For someone listening in, an audience member that wants to get it right but is so confused about the whole pronouns things in the media, can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so first, wanting to get it right, I think is the right intention. And so for folks who are nervous or unsure, that is the right intention, and that is what one should lead with. In English, pronouns are how we refer to objects or people. So this is your microphone, that's her notebook, this is our seating arrangement, and it's just the way that we refer to people. But because in English it's gendered, then it becomes part of how people understand themselves. And so when we're thinking about pronouns and thinking about wanting to use the pronouns that people use for themselves, it's a way to show respect for how people understand themselves and how they want to be referred to. I always say it's similar if somebody's name is William and they go by Bill. They say like, hi, I'm Bill. You wouldn't say, you still look like a William to me. I'm going to keep calling you William, even though you just told me you go by Bill. So it's similar to that. It's how we refer and understand ourselves.
And the same thing if someone says, I want to be called Bill, you're not going to say, you're policing my language.
You're policing my language. That's so political. Like, how can you not want to go by how I'm seeing you? I'm seeing you as a William, and so therefore I'm going to keep calling you that. It's a natural thing that we often do in other places with how people refer to themselves and how they want to be referred to. Many people don't go by either, they go by different names, they use just the pronouns that fit. And so for they, them specifically, because in English we don't have a great way to refer to ourselves in non-gendered ways or gender-inclusive ways, they, them is a nice inclusive pronoun to be able to do that.
And since the audience of this podcast, many speak or hear Hebrew.
Yeah.
I know you're married to a Israeli woman. We don't have they, them in Hebrew. So what do you use if conversing in Hebrew?
Yeah, so in Hebrew I use feminine, and that's because I learned Hebrew in feminine, and it's a hard enough language for me to converse in regularly that I couldn't add another thing on it. But I know that non-binary folks in Israel and Hebrew speakers will often switch genders in between sentences. And so we'll be able to switch back and forth. I know that sometimes they use the third person plural, but it's not as common. But our language is limiting. And so when we're thinking about the ways that our language can, we are very complex humans, and often language just doesn't align with that. And so the terms that we use or pronouns are just ways for us to try to see ourselves reflected in language, knowing that words are limiting. And so it's similar in Hebrew that folks do their best in a way that feels as right for them, and the same thing in English.
All right, do their best. So let's talk about the second third rail,
yes.
Which is embedded in the name of the organization that you've co-founded, Shalom Dykes, and it's not Shalom, although people have a problem with Shalom, but the word Dyke.
Yes.
I use it, but I'm sensitive about it. I'm worried about it. I sometimes feel like, am I using it the right way? Mm-hmm. Can you tell a 30-second history of the word dyke? Should people, in your perspective, use it, not use it? What? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a reclaimed term. In many ways, the way that queer is also a reclaimed term, that it was often used as a slur, and folks have used it as a way of reclaiming their identities and taking this word that was meant to put them down to be empowering. And so we are Shalom Dykes because we started in relation to the New York City Dyke March, and so we wanted to have that in our names to be able to showcase to people exactly who we were and what we were about. So that's specifically why we went with Dyke. But it's got a history. I've tried to look it up before, and there's like a number of different like historical roots that they say it comes from. But generally, it's a reclaimed term that typically refers to LGBTQ women, non-binary folks, trans folks. The way that we say it is, if the term dyke resonates with you, you are welcome in our space.
I see. And have you ever heard the word dyke used against you as a negative term, as a slur?
For sure. I mean, it happens on the street. It happens on the internet quite a bit. But I would say it happened more frequently previously. I think it's less of a slur that's used now, but it for sure is still used very frequently.
All right. So we've touched those things, but now I want to get to the important things.
Yes.
Before that, I need to set the stage. So tell me, if you and I had met on October 6, 2023, what were you like?
Yeah, so I would say generally, right, I'm both the same and different person that I am now. I was very much a community builder, but specifically I would say I was working within LGBTQ communities primarily. And so I was organizing with the New York City Dyke March. I was organizing with a number of other LGBTQ communities. I was hosting events at queer bars and doing a lot of community events. And then post October 7th, that LGBTQ side really did not, was not able to happen as much as it was before. So I would say pre-October 6th, I was very much the same person. Post-October 7th, the LGBTQ spaces that I had been building and a part of became much less accessible.
So the spaces have changed, and we'll talk about those spaces, but I do want to get a glimpse into pre-October 7th, Nate. And you said you were organizing at the Dyke March. Mm-hmm. So why organizing? Why was you take that for granted? Most people, when they want to go out to a bar, they text a friend.
Sure. And
they go out to a bar, or they go by themselves. They don't organize bar outings.
Yes.
Where is that coming from?
Yeah. Okay. So let's paint the picture. So you've been to Fifth Avenue in New York by Bryant Park, with the by the library with the lions, right? You've got the picture of where we are. So on a regular day, it's just people hanging out right in front of the steps, having a cup of coffee in the park. On the day of the Dyke March, that whole area is filled with dykes. 40,000 dykes surrounding this park that are going to be taking over the streets. And so no matter where you are, you see someone who reflects your community. You see bi dykes and trans dykes and dykes who are drumming and dykes who are joyful or angry or have signs, who are wearing glitter or like in various states of undress and just feeling really free with themselves. And there are very few spaces, if any spaces, where that can happen. And so my vision for the world, the Dyke March was my favorite day of the year, and really what I wanted to create in the world was to create a world where dykes can feel as free as they would on the day of the Dyke March.
You actually said the Dyke March was how I wanted the world to be.
Yes, exactly.
What does that mean? What does the world look like in your perspective?
So often we, I think many Jewish communities understand this more and more, you have to look over your shoulder. You have to scan the area. When my wife and I are planning a vacation, I look up to see, is it legal to be trans? Is it legal to be LGBTQ? What's the hate crime rate in this area? What do I have to look for? Where are the safer spaces? Are there community centers? Is there an LGBTQ bar? And it's very exhausting on a day-to-day. Every time we travel somewhere. It is always surprising to me how many countries where it's still illegal to be gay, where homosexuality or
to be you,
to be me. I mean, right? Some sort of gender expression, some sort of trans identity, there's some explicit law or implicit actions or explicit laws that would prevent us from going. So that's like what the day-to-day is. But the Dyke March was that one day where you could be free and you can feel like you can wear anything, you could just be walking or marching or dancing, and it can be okay. And the Dyke March has trained safety marshals, and so you've got folks protecting you from all sides that are part of your community, and so it very much feels like out there the world can be very scary. Here in this space, we are going to do our very best to make sure that we can feel as safe as we can be.
And for someone looking from the outside, they might ask, well, there's gay pride. Why is there a need for another march?
Yeah, so the Dyke March started in 1993. It was the day before the big International Gay and Lesbian March on Washington, and the folks who started it were the Lesbian Avengers, which is always an excellent name and very fun to say. But they were a direct action group, and they wanted to make sure that at the time, specifically women's issues were highlighted and visible in a way that they felt were getting swallowed in the larger conversations around LGBTQ rights at the time. And so they wanted to make sure that specifically the issues and the challenges and the concerns that lesbian and trans folks are facing were visible. And so that's why they started the Dyke March. And it's still the same today. Often at Gay Pride, you'll both see it being predominantly cisgender gay men. And then it's also predominantly less so now with DEI rollbacks and corporations not being as visible in their support, but previously would be a lot of corporations. And so it would be like, Pride by TD Bank, right? Like nothing against TD Bank, but like they are not the ones who are creating my community for me. So the Dyke March itself is still a protest march, so it's not officially permitted. So it still very much felt by and for community in a way that traditional Pride doesn't.
Do you remember your first march?
I mean, I do.
Not to say that it wasn't good. Sometimes the things you don't remember are the best things in
no,
life.
That's funny. No. It was, I was trying to think through how detailed to get. So we said that we were chatting before I went to Barnard. And so I grew up on Staten Island. And do you know Staten Island? Yeah. I guess you're in Jersey, so it's not, it's on the way. But I grew up on Staten Island. Staten Island is not the most open place for LGBTQ folks generally. At the time, I was having just a really hard time with my family. And Barnard is a women's college. They've come a long way with trans inclusion, but at the time when I was there was not a lot of trans inclusion. And so I felt like, sorry, I keep hitting this. It was a time where I really needed community. And so I was able to find this space within the city that actually felt like I belonged there. And I didn't have to worry, and I didn't have to worry about not fitting in on Staten Island, not fitting in within my family. And it was that feeling of just being able to like breathe a little bit and just breathe a little bit easier and know that there are people who are like me, and there's something really special because it's an intergenerational space. So I was able to see dykes who are much older than me. I was able to see what it might look like to have a future in a way that I couldn't envision for myself at the time.
So you said belonging, and you said feeling like you can breathe a little bit easier. And I think a lot of the people watching or listening may have had that experience in different parts of their identity. Can you try and describe that moment? Maybe, you're taking the subway to the Dyke March, so you're in the quote unquote everyday world, and then stepping in, that moment of stepping in beyond the safety marshals into the march, that breathing a bit easier. Can you just elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so the Dyke March, often to indicate who a safety marshal is, I was part of the organizing committee for the Dyke March for, 10 years. So, but on the way to the march, I would wear my shirt that said Dyke, and it would always be a moment. My wife would always be like, I think you should put on something else. Like when you're on the subway, maybe you don't have the Dyke across your chest while you are on your way there. Or similarly, right when I'm going into Pride and I've got all the rainbow bandanas and on my way back from Pride, I'm slowly taking them all off. It's very similar, where I'm concerned about the visible markers that will just be able to attract attention that I don't necessarily want. But then when you're at the march surrounded by these folks, it becomes a source of pride. And you're like, I am part of this. These are my people. I am here. I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing. I can show this proudly. It can be reflective of my history, my community, and who I want to be in the world.
I think that's part of any identity that is somewhat transparent, somewhat visible, which is like being Jewish, where people are asking, well, on the way to a synagogue, on the way to the JCC, do I show my identity in the same way?
Yep.
So you've been not just part of the community, but an active member organizing the Dyke March for almost a decade, and then you quit. What happened?
Yeah. Quitting sounds so intentional. I mean, it was, but it.
You left.
Yeah.
Or was forced out.
Yes, I mean, yes, all of the above. So the Dyke March committee, as I mentioned, it's a multi-generational space, and so it's spanned from 19-year-olds to 80. We had folks from across identities, with very different opinions. I don't know how much you know about Dyke communities, but there's often a lot of drama within Dyke communities, and so the community itself was not a stranger.
Every community has drama.
I mean, sure, yes. And so the community itself was not a stranger to like talking through hard situations, talking through complicated situations, and having these kinds of conversations that included talking about differences. Even specifically Israel, we had been having conversations about Israel since 2018, I think, is when the Chicago Dyke March banned flags with the Star of David on them. And so because folks don't know that Dyke Marches operate independently, they had come to New York City and said, why did you ban this? What's going on? And so we had to have the conversation internally. And those conversations always ended with inclusion. We would have these conversations that said, if we were going to ban, let's say, the Israeli flag, then wouldn't we have to ban every other country's flag that was not friendly to LGBTQ folks or was not democratic? And for that matter, like, what about the American flag? If like a dyke who is a veteran wants to show up with an American flag, don't we want to support that? Isn't that also an act of defiance and resilience and pride in whatever way that means? And so those conversations always ended with inclusion. And of course, New York City is home to so many Jews. Knowing if we were going to do something like that, it would exclude many folks. And we were able to have the conversations. They weren't easy, but we were able to have it in a way that was still centering the community and still focusing on the impact. We hosted one march a year. This is what the focus was.
I want to freeze for a second, because I feel like I know where this is going.
Where's
where
it
the
going?
Conversation is not going to work. So I want to go back to when the conversations were still present.
Yeah.
And difficult.
Yeah.
What did they look like? What was like? Take me inside a room, because ideally we would want those rooms to come back where we're able to have these conversations. Yeah.
So I think that there's an underlying care to the conversations when they're working. There's a feeling of it's all volunteer run. And so there's a feeling of you are giving up your time and your energy to put on something that you deeply care about. You care about our community. It's a labor of love, right? You're putting this on for the wider community. This thing you are a part of is much bigger than yourself. And so when the conversations work, that's still at its core. So even though we're disagreeing, you know that I'm not disagreeing with you about who you are or your intentions, or I'm not questioning your care for the community. It's a given. I understand that. We're talking specifically about what our differences are and how we want to make that vision happen. And so I'm saying I want to make sure that we can be as inclusive as possible. My wife's Israeli. I want to make sure that she can show up. I want to make sure that my friends and family can show up. I want to make sure that Jewish dykes can show up. And somebody else is saying, well, I want to make sure that Palestinian dykes can show up. I want to make sure that we can include folks who might see the Israeli flag and feel a certain kind of way, right? And what does that mean? And so we were able to have the conversations where all of those differences could be in the room, but the focus was always on the community care. And so when we were having the conversations that worked, we talked about the safety mechanisms that we already had in place. We trained these marshals. Maybe we can put a different scenario in our trainings that can explicitly address this. What do we do if X, Y, and Z happens? And so the conversations often shifted to what would it look like if there was a disruption? Because the focus should have been and was at the time on just making sure the march happened safely and as we planned it.
So basically, if I'm translating it, it seems like what you were trying to do is like get as many people to feel comfortable to be in the march, be part of the community, and at the same time prepare for having fringes in the community where might clash and might not feel comfortable, and how do we diffuse or de-escalate those situations?
Right.
Those were the conversations.
Yeah, because we always had situations that needed de-escalating, no matter what, right? There's always people who are going to not like seeing so many dykes being as visible as we were, and so those would happen. And so what did that mean? And so we had these mechanisms already, and we were able to apply it to the situation.
And then what changed?
And then what changed? Post the 7th, very shortly after the 7th.
Which I should say October 7th.
October 7th, yeah. Folks started, the Dyke March has like a planning season. And so this was off the planning season, but folks were still active in a chat. And so very quickly we had folks starting to say we need to put out a statement in solidarity with Palestinians. And then the conversations...
Has the Dyke March ever put statements in solidarity with anyone, anything?
No, and it's been... I have been in conversation and in community with the founders of the Dyke March, and they often say that throughout the years there have been people who wanted that. They wanted the Dyke March to be in service of a thing, no matter what the thing was. And the founders would always say that this is the Dyke March. Everyone can come with their own sign and their own political issue that they want to elevate, but all dykes should be welcome, no matter what. And so the Dyke March has themes that are on their banner every year. And so one year it was like Dykes Without Borders, and the idea was for immigration. But it was often very broad statements where you can apply whatever lens you had. So I can't really remember anything being like a specific issue.
Right, because if you say Dykes Without Borders, for some that means open borders, for others that means legal immigration, for others that mean, some version in the middle,
Exactly.
Empathy, compassion, whatever it is. It's a general idea.
Yep, exactly. And so the short answer is not really that I can't remember of there being a specific issue like a proper statement about something, because it's a grassroots community, and so the conversation started in that way and just deteriorated very, very quickly. That it became very clear very quickly that folks, I don't know if it was social media, where folks felt like they had a full understanding of the issues and that they needed to say this thing in a very specific way that was saying the right thing. And to me, it always felt very performative, and that care of community and the impact wasn't there anymore.
So I want to play devil's advocate and go into the mind of someone who's part of this community and pushing for expressing solidarity, which is kind of weird because this is happening right after a massacre. Like, you typically don't express solidarity with the side that is massacring. But let's put that aside and say, from their perspective, they want to feel part of the community. And to feel part of the community, they feel like my community should stand for what I stand for.
Yes, and I think specifically within LGBTQ communities, because so often we have to keep ourselves safe. And so there's this feeling and sentiment and shared language that says, like, out there, we don't know what's going to happen out there. There might be transphobia, there's going to be homophobia and biphobia, but in this space, there's not going to be that. We're going to do our best. We're going to make sure that we can create a space that doesn't have that. And so that means we're going to have a zero tolerance policy. And because of unexamined anti-Semitism, I would say, because of framings of Zionism, because of so many different things, this issue fell within that. It fell within the, like, if you are believing in this, if you are not wanting to fully show solidarity and support for Palestinians, then you are part of this unsafe bucket and you don't have a place within the LGBT community.
So basically, zero tolerance for Israel.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that was off the season. That was some conversations happening, but not really affecting the Dyke March yet.
Right. And so when I was there, I was trying to articulate that if we put out a statement like this, we are automatically going to exclude many folks, no matter what. Like if you put out this statement, it's going to be very hard because so many folks don't have any sort of ongoing relationship with the Dyke March. They will see one thing, and then that'll be it. Then there's going to be now a narrative that it's going to be unsafe for Jews, unsafe for Israelis, not welcoming. But those conversations really did not go anywhere and became just very difficult. It became hard, both that it felt like folks weren't seeing me anymore, almost as human, right? That they were just seeing this kind of set of issues. And these were folks that I had built trust with for over a decade. And so I thought that we had this relationship where we could have talked about it. But it very quickly became not that. And at home, I had it was such a strange juxtaposition of being in these spaces with folks who had never been to Israel, had no connection to the conflict on any side of it, didn't have this understanding, like very clearly had a very superficial understanding or an understanding that I think primarily came from social media when it was in my home. You know, my wife we would have Israeli radio on and she'd be watching the news, and every morning she'd get up to look at the list and see if somebody she knew was kidnapped or dead. And it was such a strange moment to be living in these two worlds of these folks who were so passionate but had no connection, and then it being like a very lived experience for me, and then not being welcome, right? So many other times, if I can say, as a trans person, I feel this way, that would be taken seriously because it's my experience. In this particular case, it was seen with suspicion and too subjective. As a Jew, as somebody with a connection to Israel, I was not to be trusted in this way.
So one thing that's very hard to ignore is how even keel you are in describing this. Were you even keel at the time? Is that who you are? Or what was your experience? Like sitting there in a room with people that you've built trust, you've built friendships, you've built love, and going to that, I can't breathe fully in this space anymore.
Yes, it is absolutely who I am. Just generally my approach to the world, I'm very even-keeled and very much want to bring folks together in conversation. I'm like a facilitator by training and also just by being in the world. And so it was something that I was actually both known for within the community, but also my approach. And so when this happened, that was my approach. But at a certain point, I'm also very practical. And I know that in order for us to have a conversation that is going to be productive and have an outcome, folks have to be coming with good intentions and have to be coming wanting a good outcome. And so I could keep trying to have this conversation, but once it became clear to me that folks were not interested in the conversation, they were interested in putting out a statement, they were interested in saying this thing, whatever this, like the kind of the thing changed throughout as time went on, but that's what their focus was. And they weren't hearing me anymore. And then it just became harmful for me to stay. Like just emotionally, personally, it wasn't something that I could do. And then eventually they explicitly included anti-Zionism within their values, and that we can go on to that next. But when I initially left, it was because it just felt like an unhealthy space.
So you left. Mm-hmm. Then what happened to the Dyke March?
Yeah. I kept getting screenshots, and I'm not on Instagram, and so I also kept getting Instagram posts about the anti-Semitic things that they were saying, and I was just gonna let it go. I was like, they're gonna do their thing. Some of the founders and some of the original folks who started the Dyke March reached out to me. They're like, what is going on there? They tried to be involved, and it didn't work. And so I was going to let it go. And then there was a few other very intense moments from folks within the community that there was doxing and a bunch of things that I think feel a little too much to get into. But a few weeks before the march, I had folks reach out to me from different parts of my community to say, what are we doing? Are we going to protest the Dyke March? Are we going to have our own thing? We need to do something. And it felt unproductive and dangerous for me to have folks go and counter protest. And so instead, I got connected to a few other people who were trying to create something, and we decided to create something new together.
And this was in reaction to the Dyke March explicitly saying that they stand for, if I'm not mistaken, it says anti-Zionism, anti-racism, pro-LGBTQ.
Yeah, and And their statements kept getting more inflammatory. Like some of the organizations they were supporting, like supported Hamas. Like it was like very clear in both their language and how they were, and how, because for a while I thought that maybe there was just some misunderstanding that they, as part of a marginalized community, LGBTQ communities want to support other marginalized communities. And so I thought it was that. But the statements and the way that it escalated was just clear that it was not only that.
You know, I rarely get shocked in what I do because, you know, my finger's on the pulse all the time. But when I was reading about this and I saw the Dyke March every year fundraises with a few different organizations, and that year they fundraised, one of the organizations was Within Our Lifetime.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking about.
Openly supports terrorism. Like it's not like an if, maybe. It's like clearly an
it's
open.
It's very clear. Yeah.
So some people say that, you know, we have to stay in spaces and fight. Some people say, no, we have to go and build our own things. Why did you choose to go build your own thing, which we'll get to in a second, rather than fight?
So I tried to do both for a while. So once it became clear that I couldn't stay in that space, that's when we built our own thing. And it like turned out that there were many more people who felt similarly, and so we got like a few hundred folks showing up to our events, and we understood that this was a much larger thing. That I believed in a movement that focused on belonging until it told me that I didn't belong anymore, and it told me that my family didn't belong. And it turns out that I wasn't the only one on the outside of this; that there were hundreds of others. And so that's what sparked me understanding that there was something within building our own spaces where we could be joyful, where we could breathe easier, similar to the Dyke March, that the space was needed in and of itself. And also at the same time, I did try to talk to the organizers of the Dyke March again, that the founders said that this went against their founding vision of the Dyke March, that they really wanted a Dyke March where anyone who identified as a Dyke would be able to show up. They can show up with whatever sign they wanted, and the march needed to be safe, so you know, no explicit hate speech or nothing that was going to cause disruption. But that was going to be it, and they were going to have safety marshals, but they wanted everyone to show up, and so I knew that the founders were against this, and so I tried to have the conversation again, and the second time around was even like they were taking an even harder line with it, and it just didn't work. And so then I would say that I'm not giving up. I think Pride and LGBTQ communities are built around coalitions, and I still believe that. And I think that we need to be in coalition with one another, and that needs to be it needs to be mutual. We need to understand what our vision is for a community, where we have our differences, where we have our similarities, but really be able to make sure that we can speak to one another and see one another. And that wasn't possible each time I've tried. I haven't tried in a while, and I don't think I will for a while. But.
Which gets us to what you did build.
Yes.
Which is Shalom Dykes. And we should say that you built it with, you know, it's a grassroots organization. Yeah. You're not the head. There are many people involved. You're the one that was able to come and talk today.
Yes.
What is Shalom Dykes? What did you build, or what are you envisioning for it?
Yeah, so it's really a space to build visible, joyful Jewish communities for folks who've got a connection to Israel, for folks who have a connection to Zionism, who want to be in a space where you can breathe easier, right? That I can bring my Israeli wife and our Israeli friends, and that be okay. And so that's really what the space has been. We started our first event not knowing who would show up, and then we had a few hundred folks show up, and our last event had 600 people show up. When the Dyke March, the second time around, posted their statements that said anti-Zionism was explicitly within their values now, we posted an open letter, and that got 2,500 signatures. And so it's grown in a way that is just hopeful, in a way that feels like building something. It's like a long line of Jews being kicked out and unwelcome in spaces, and then building something better. And it feels like we are part of that lineage now.
So you basically created Shalom Dykes as almost as a reaction to the Dyke March. Like, everyone will be going to this. I don't feel comfortable going to this. Let me go to my alternative.
Yep.
What was it like? Was it a party? Did it feel like more of a somber political moment? Was it family? What was it?
Yeah, so we planned it so folks who were going to the Dyke March and wanted a space and wanted to grab some posters that said, you know, Jews belong here, or whatever the poster said, we had those posters for them so they can come, they can like gather their energy with this community and go to the Dyke March. or folks who wanted to go to the Dyke March had very negative experiences, then can come to our party after. Or folks who didn't want anything to do with the Dyke March at all could show up to our event. And so the space was built for that in mind. So folks could have the space where they felt that feeling of community that they had on the Dyke March, they could still experience it in some way. It was really important because so many of our queer spaces that we need to feel safe in the world, to feel okay in the world, aren't accessible to us anymore. That so many LGBTQ events and bars explicitly say no Zionists allowed. They'll have signs or have anti-Zionism be in their beds. So many other things that
they'll make it clear to you that you're not wanted. In the same way that your identity as a trans person, as a dyke, is also can be made feel uncomfortable.
Right.
They don't have to come and say you out to make you feel unwelcome.
That's exactly it. And so this space was so important because at the time there were so few spaces where you felt like you could bring all of the parts of yourself and you didn't have to, I don't want to say hide because you can't really hide a part of you, but really where you didn't have to feel like one part needed to be dampened, right? You could feel like you can come with your full vibrant self and that was okay. And there really weren't many spaces where that could happen. And so this event was that space where folks could just come and feel like they could bring their Jewish self, they could bring their connection to Israel, they could bring their, very complex, messy identities into a space, and it can be joyful and it can be celebratory. But the same way that the Dyke March and Pride also started as a political resistance, it still had that feeling of who we are because of the world that we live in is an act of resistance, right? Being alive, being able to choose something celebratory or just choosing to show up into a space isn't in itself political. So I'm Italian and I use a lot of hand gestures and I'm trying very hard to keep them still. But so it was all of the above.
And did non-Jewish allies show up?
Yeah. We had a lot of, or a handful of like some of the founding Dyke March folks show up, which was really special. We had a lot of non-LGBTQ but Jewish allies show up, which was really nice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And I'm especially interested in the perceptions of non-Jewish dykes looking and seeing, and what do they see? Especially you mentioned the founders, the older guard. Like, what are they experiencing? Because you could easily say, "Look, Nate, you're Jewish. You have a bias here. You're married to an Israeli.
Yes.
So of course you see things this way. But what does a third person in that space? What do they see?"
So it actually often really does depend on, I want to say like how many Jews that they know. So often there's this feeling of, well, I know one Jew and they agree with me, and so therefore this isn't anti-Semitic and therefore this is the right kind of Jew, and you are the wrong kind of Jew. And so I think that it depends on how many Jews they have in their network, what their connection to Israel was before, if they had been to Israel, if they had known Israelis. And like different understandings of Zionism and the history of Israel, I think is a big piece, because if you only hear that Zionism means, taking, I can go into, all the things, taking over the land and it's colonial and it's racist and it's all these things, and that's your view, then they see us in that lens. And they're like, who are these people who, I mean, it always feels so silly to say, because it feels, that it aligns often so neatly with anti-Semitic tropes. It's like, who are these people who are killing babies? And who are these people who are doing all these things or like support it? And no one supports that. We're still we're LGBTQ communities who care about justice and care about and believe in that for us and for everyone. And so, but the folks who are viewing this see us outside of that.
I make these shirts that say, "This is what a Zionist looks like," to kind of like break people's perceptions of Zionism and Zionists. And I'm always intrigued by people who see me in that shirt and hate me.
Yeah.
And in their mind, they say Zionism is racism, right? So this is basically a person wearing a shirt that says, "This is what a racist looks like."
Right.
Yet no racist would ever wear a shirt, because racists don't think they're racist.
Right.
So
Sure.
So if someone sees me in that shirt, they probably they need to think that either I don't know what Zionism is, so they shouldn't get angry, or that I'm somewhat mentally incoherent, and then they shouldn't get angry. The anger that we elicit just by being is fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's fascinating and also just disheartening and also confusing. Because my wife often says, well, what do they want me to do? Do they want me to disavow my citizenship? Is that what they want me to do? Like, in order for me to walk into this gay bar, I need to give up my Israeli citizenship. Is that it?
Clearly not enough, because you don't have a citizenship.
Well, that's exactly it. Right. So there's something about it that doesn't make sense. And also there's something about it that is very self-serving, I think, to folks who are believing this, because it's not fixing anything. It's not helping the situation there. It's not, all it does is hurt Jews here. That's really the like what happens for folks who are on that side. It's not helping the situation. All it does is exclude Jews from the spaces that were meant to protect us.
So I want to go again back in time a bit to that. You alluded to the 2017 Chicago Dyke March, which, to my knowledge, was the first where there was explicitly like this Jewish star, you cannot have it on your flags, and basically no Zionists.
Yep.
At the time, were you surprised? Were you shocked? Or did you see this coming? Did you think this was a fringe moment that will disappear?
I wasn't surprised, and I thought that I didn't think it was a fringe moment. I knew that it was often part of LGBTQ community language, like a shared framework that folks had. And so it wasn't surprising. I think what was surprising is that there wasn't, once somebody told them, once somebody said, hey, this is going to exclude queer Jews, this is actually a Jewish pride flag. It is a Star of David on a rainbow. It's actually nothing, yes, it might resemble an Israeli flag, but specifically.
In fact, I'm sure you can find a lot of Israelis that might be homophobic, transphobic, and dislike that flag.
Yes.
Right? So.
Yes. Yeah. And so what was surprising to me was when they were told, they didn't care. And it's similar to how I felt with conversations about Zionism within the Dyke March later, that they were told that the definition that they were showcasing is not the way that most Jews understand Zionism, and doesn't actually make sense to most folks. And it's this framework and understanding that actually doesn't exist for the people that they are trying to ban. So that was surprising to me, because often in queer communities there is this culture of learning, right? We know that our identities are complex, and language is always, like we had the conversation we started this with, our language is always trying to catch up. And so there's this understanding of somebody who has a specific experience or understanding can say that and will listen and will understand and say, I get it now, I was wrong, I'm going to change my behavior because I care about this space. Mm-hmm. And so that piece was surprising, that even when told, they were doubling down.
So are we experiencing, especially in LGBTQ spaces and organizations, or leadership of the organizations, are we experiencing a blip, a moment in time, or are we experiencing the moment things shifted? So in the future, would there still be a need for Shalom Dykes, or will there be a moment where you'll just be another faction marching again in the Dyke March?
I have to believe that it is a blip, because we've seen, in our country, the attacks on trans communities, the attack on LGBT communities worldwide. We need one another in order to build strong communities that we all can thrive in. And I think that there is always going to be a need for Shalom Dykes. I think that it's a both and, that I think it has to be a blip in time, and that I can't give up on the other parts of my community. I don't see a path forward right now, because folks don't want to listen, and they don't think that they need to. And so I don't fully see what the path forward is. And I know that there has to be one because of seeing history, seeing what our current situation is, and knowing the strength and power of LGBTQ communities when we come together, and how special that can be. I have to believe that it is a blip, and that eventually we will be able to have our full communities again.
Are there other Shalom Dykes around the country, or is it a New York City phenomena?
So we have this leadership committee now that has like 20 folks who are actively organizing with us, right? Our events get a few hundred folks every time. We've had parallel movements start mostly on the West Coast, and folks who are on our mailing list or when we do virtual events show up across the country. And so I know that other folks exist who are part of this and who have started similar things, particularly within the Bay Area. So it's like a yes and that it's New York specific and also actively becoming. We're not like starting chapters or anything. It's not like that, but I do know that this has inspired other folks who said, actually, we really need this here.
Well, let me push this a bit forward and say, will we be seeing you organizing an international Tel Aviv Dyke March from Israel and all over the world? The answer is yes. You should just say yes. We called it first. No.
Yeah, no. I mean, the answer is that we want to, because everyone knows their community the best. Grew up in New York City. I'm very New York City based. I know New York City. I know the Dykes of New York City. I know what New York City needs. While I visited Tel Aviv a bunch with my wife, I don't know Tel Aviv Dykes. And so what I would want to do, the way that the Dyke March started, was provide the structure and the resources and the support for these local communities to then create their own thing that makes sense for them. Maybe it's not a Shalom Dykes. Maybe it's a dinner club or a weekly protest in the street or whatever might matter to them. But folks know their community is the best, and because LGBTQ communities are often hyper local. You know the right bar, you know the right cafe, you know the right people. And you can only really, really know that by living there. So that's what I would want. So I wouldn't want Shalom Dykes to come in and do that, but I would want Shalom Dykes to inspire others to do the same.
How can non-LGBTQ Jews and non-Jews, LGBTQ or not, be allies to Zionist LGBTQ community?
Yeah, so I'm like trying to think through what the city says. I think that there is this feeling that we don't exist first, that all of the LGBTQ Jews are anti-Zionist, don't care about Israel. And so the first thing that I want to say is like there are many of us and that we exist kind of across the spectrum. So just to say, when we're thinking about this, be inclusive of LGBTQ communities because we're here. And the other thing that I would say is there's often this narrative of how can LGBTQ communities support Palestinians when you can't be gay in Gaza, something like that. And that narrative often is very unhelpful because the folks who are for that are saying they're for human rights and they're for right now, there's homophobia everywhere, and so folks are caring about this human rights issue that they're seeing. And so those narratives often don't actually help our communities, even though they feel really compelling to folks because they're like, obviously, how can you support this? So it's not actually getting to the core of the issue. And so I guess what I'm getting at is to be able to start with maybe questioning some of the things that you think you might know about LGBTQ communities generally, and then being able to just start to interact with us more to be able to understand that like we are here, we do exist. We are building communities and we are building movements, and we want to be in broader coalition with one another.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, and it's definitely not your job to educate people. But if people want to get educated on the topic, people want to learn more, they want to expose themselves. Are there any books, documentaries, podcasts, websites, Instagram people to follow that you would recommend start here?
None that are coming to mind, which is unhelpful. Why don't I think about it and like get you a list that we can like add to this episode, because I don't want to say something that isn't actually someone that I'd want to get behind.
Yeah, it is telling, and I think for someone listening who identifies as Zionist and a Dyke, maybe it's time to start your podcast, start your
for sure.
social media,
and come to Shalom Dykes, right? That's why we're here, and it's it's part of why to actually be able to create the spaces where the performers can come, where we can, have a band or just have, just be with one another, because it can feel very, very lonely.
All right, so we're going to end with the Here I Am lightning round. It's a series of rapid fire questions. There's no right or wrong answer. Just feel free to say whatever comes to mind. Nate Shalev, what is one thing people don't know about you?
This is a lightning round, that I chose both of my names. Because you said Nate Shalev, and I was like, oh, I actually chose both of those names.
What is one thing people don't know about the Jews?
That we are, it depends on who you're asking. I guess I'm not very good at lightning rounds. My initial instinct was that Jews are a very diverse people with a lot of different backgrounds and communities and practices.
When was the last time you cried?
Oh, this is ridiculous. I cried at a Mets game. I wish I had a better response.
So because they won, because they lost, or because
they
saw
always
a really
lose.
cute puppy?
No, it was Ronnie Mauricio. It was like his first time up, and he hit a home run, and he helped win the game, and he wasn't supposed to be up in the major leagues. It wasn't a super emotional thing, but I will answer honestly and say that is the last time I cried.
I think that's incredible, especially, and I'm going to go on record, never been to a baseball game. I don't see but you cried. That's beautiful. If you could have any Jewish person over for Shabbat dinner from any moment in history, dead or living, who would that be?
I really idolized Golda Meir growing up, and I know that is probably like an expected answer, but that is the first person that came to mind, and so I'm going to stick with it. Historical, and my 8-year-old self would be very excited.
What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
I like Shabbat. I like regular Shabbat.
What is your least favorite Jewish holiday?
This is an unpopular opinion. I do not like costumes. I'm not a costume person, and so Purim is tough. And it's also a very gay holiday. And so there's often these, we help run this, or we partner with this very big queer Purim party, but it's hard for me.
When do you feel safest?
When do I feel safest? With the book in the park with my dog.
John Jett.
Yes, John Jett. Yeah.
John Jett, that's your dog.
Yeah.
When do you feel least safe?
When do I feel least safe? Again, this is not a surprising answer, but TSA through the airports.
What gives you hope?
Shalom Dykes. I know that's what we're here to talk about, but being able to create a community where it felt really lonely before, and where it felt like we didn't have anyone, and then to be in a space where hundreds of others are like, no, you're not alone, has been really hopeful. And being able to build something rather than being just in reaction to something has been really hopeful, to say that we can create something new that didn't exist and is powerful and beautiful all at the same time is something to hope for.
Finally, every episode I urge the listeners to donate to one charity that does good in Israel, the Jewish diaspora, or the world in general. Where would you want listeners to donate to this week?
Yeah, if we're thinking about Israel, the Agudah in Israel, which is Israel's LGBT task force, they do so much good work across LGBTQ communities. Yeah,
I would say Agudah, A-G-U-D-A. Mm-hmm. And they also have IGI, which is the youth organization for
there are many
LGBTQ youth in Israel.
Yeah, there are many great, very specific LGBT organizations, organizations working for religious communities in Israel, like LGBT religious communities, or LGBT youth who are experiencing homelessness. There are so many different ones, and so if there's a specific issue, Israel often has, I think because it's smaller, often has a specific organization to be able to support that in a way that we don't have here.
So Nate, you mentioned that you're not on social media, but where can people find Shalom Dykes and either join or support, show up to events?
I am on LinkedIn, and so if you think LinkedIn is social media, which is another story, Shalom Dykes is shalomdykes.com. We don't have an Instagram or also any social media, and that was very intentional, seeing the way that it deteriorated Dyke March. I think social media itself was a huge part of how that community fell apart because there was a need to be performative and showcase themselves in a way that wasn't authentic. I think social media plays a huge part in that. So Shalom Dykes is not on Instagram, but we have a newsletter that you can join and our website to find out about our events.
All right, so shalomdykes.com, and on LinkedIn, Nate Shalev.
Yes.
That's Shalev.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to talk about LinkedIn, it's a whole other story. But there's something there around connection and community.
We'll have to bring you back next time as a LinkedIn expert. This has been a pleasure. Honestly, I am surprised that there hasn't been a Shalom Dykes before. It's unfortunate the conditions under which it came about, but I'm happy that it exists, and I'm happy to consider myself an ally and whatever you need. And I just say, here I am, Nate Shalev.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome anytime. We always say it's Shalom Dykes and the people who love us. And so you are welcome as somebody who loves us, as is anyone.
This is great. Thank you.